The one with 3 eyes was clearly Erlang Shun, yet the man stubbornly insisted it was the god of the land. The next second, Erlang Shun erased him on the spot. When Liu Changsheng corrected the name, he was met with ruthless mockery from the Sakura Nation spectators. Even his fellow Hashia students laughed at him, calling him an idiot. 100 years ago, the national fate arena descended upon the world. The gods of every nation awakened. Anyone over 16 could awaken a deity through the divine revelation stone, say the name correctly, gain divine power, and fight for their nation in the mythic arena. Say it wrong, and the god would execute them on the spot. The Hashia civilization had suffered a complete rupture. Countless myths and histories were forgotten. As a result, Hashia had already lost 2 consecutive wars initiated by the Sakura Nation. Another defeat would mean ceding territory and watching national fortune decline. Liu Changsheng, once a university student majoring in archaeology, had transmigrated into this world of divine combat. He became the only person who still knew every Hashia deity, and today happened to be the once-in-a-decade Divine Revelation Day. At that moment, Liu Yanran, daughter of the Sword Immortal, stepped forward without hesitation. As Hashia's last hope, the instant her finger touched divine consciousness, multiple godly phantoms manifested. Under the stunned gazes of the crowd, Liu Yanran declared solemnly, "Junior respectfully invites the god of slaughter, Bai Qi of the Battle of Red Cliffs, to descend." Liu Changsheng was shocked. A god from the Qin dynasty had nothing to do with a late Easter Han battle. Chomping was the correct one. The moment he spoke, sneers erupted around him. What an ignorant nobody. How dare he judge the top-ranked Sword Immortal's daughter? Liu Changsheng could only feel sorrow. Hashia civilization truly had collapsed. History itself had been forgotten. Even so, Liu Yanran successfully awakened S-rank god of slaughter Bai Qi. Unfortunately, she still couldn't represent Hashia in this match. Her compatibility with Bai Qi was a pitiful 40%. Dissatisfied, Liu Yanran turned toward another figure, a black-robed emperor. With imperial records so scarce, the crowd instinctively assumed it was Emperor Taizong of Tang, the eternal sovereign. Liu Changsheng spotted the flaw at a glance. In history, only one emperor ever wore a black dragon robe, his legendary ancestor. Just as Liu Yanran stepped forward to call out the name, a sharp rebuke cut her off. The speaker was Li Xian, headmaster of the Tianshu Academy and the foremost of Hashia's 4 great academies. His expression was grave. "This is the first time an imperial deity has appeared on the arena," he said, "but Hashia has produced countless emperors over thousands of years. Calling a name rashly could mean death and soul annihilation." The city lord stepped in as well. "Exactly, Yanran. You're Hashia's last hope. There can be no mistakes." Liu Yanran was torn with hesitation. She knew that once she stepped away, this supreme deity would vanish completely, along with Hashia's rare chance to rise again. Li Xian fell silent, his gaze shifting between Liu Yanran and the faint imperial soul. In the end, he chose to expend 10 years of national fortune to anchor the deity temporarily. Before the entire academy, he announced, "This deity is most likely Emperor Taizong of Tang, Li Shimin." That said, with the information we currently possess, we still can't confirm its true identity. This concerns Hashia's fate. Is there any student willing to step forward and try? The moment he finished speaking, the crowd erupted, countless students volunteering at once. They all knew stepping up could mean instant death, but they had long cast aside fear of dying. Amid the fervor, Liu Changsheng raised his hand without hesitation. "Headmaster, your judgment may be wronged at AS for this deity's origin. Liu Changsheng of Jinling Academy is willing to try." The crowd thought he had lost his mind, questioning the headmaster outright. In the Sakura Nation stands, laughter broke out. They mocked that even if Liu succeeded, he'd never defeat their Yamada no Orochi. Liu Changsheng ignored them all. He stepped forward and climbed onto the divine revelation platform. The instant his finger touched the awakening stone, A crimson pressure erupted skyward, engulfing the entire arena. Lu Yinran froze. She never imagined Lu Changsheng would trigger a red phenomenon. The crowd was equally stunned. In their understanding, orange was the highest known grade, seen only in Indra and Greece. Huaxia's strongest deities had never surpassed purple. Li Xian recognized it instantly. This is 3S, tier Divine Fortune. Divine Fortune was ranked white, green, blue, purple, and orange. Yet few knew that above orange existed red. Across the world, only one deity was acknowledged to possess it, enthroned in the Vatican and revered as God. The city lord trembled. Had Huaxia truly once possessed a 3S tier deity? But Lu Changsheng knew better. 3S was merely the ceiling of gods, not the limit of Pangu. That being once split heaven and earth with an axe, transforming into all creation. Its combat power was beyond measure. Li Xian stared at the forming figure, whispering, an axe in hand, standing between heaven and earth, brute strength incarnate. Could it be Xingtian? Hearing that, Lu Changsheng cursed inwardly. Xingtian was headless, with eyes on his chest and a mouth at his navel. Yet this figure clearly had limbs intact. How could it possibly be Xingtian? He couldn't help but feel bitter. Huaxia's mythology had decayed to this extent. Perhaps this was the very reason he had transmigrated here. Without hesitation, Lu Changsheng shouted toward the apparition, chanting, in primordial chaos, Pangu forged heaven and earth, divine sinews tearing the void asunder. Junior Lu Changsheng respectfully summons the creator god, Pangu. The moment the words creator god rang out, the Sakura Nation spectators lost all composure. They had never imagined Huaxia still possessed a 3S tier creator deity. Even the Huaxia crowd flipped instantly, erupting in excited cheers. No way, this guy actually knows his stuff. As Pangu's phantom solidified, an overwhelming pressure flooded the arena. As Huaxia's supreme deity, his power surged violently through Lu Changsheng's body. With this blessing, victory felt inevitable. A translucent interface appeared before Lu Changsheng, frowny face, contract deity, Pangu compatibility, 1%. At the same time, far away, Pangu's awakening shook the hall of myriad gods to its core. A young Taoist attendant saw this and sprinted to the mountaintop, preparing to strike the fortune bell, proclaiming destiny to the world. As 9 thunderous chimes echoed across heaven and earth, Huaxia's fate officially shifted at that very moment. Far away, Sword Immortal Lu Qing initially thought he was mistaken, until confirmation arrived, jolting him awake. Upon hearing the 9 chimes, the headmaster could no longer contain his joy. Heaven blesses Huaxia. We finally have the protection of a supreme god. Meanwhile, on the Sakura Nation's side, the emperor's face twisted with jealousy and rage. He couldn't tolerate Huaxia gaining the upper hand. Without hesitation, he burned 10 years of national fortune to forcibly open the mythic arena ahead of schedule. He dispatched Matsumoto Ginzone, along with the undefeated Yamada no Orochi. Their goal was clear, to crush Huaxia's prodigy before he could rise. But with his current compatibility, Lu Changsheng couldn't summon Pangu in battle. With no time to spare, he prepared to awaken the black-robed emperor instead, only to be forcibly teleported into the arena before he could act. The crowd erupted in fury, cursing the Sakura Nation for its shameless tactics. The moment the Sword Immortal learned that the national fate battle had been forced open early, he saw through their scheme instantly. He swore an oath on the spot. If Huaxia's prodigy fell here, he would trample Shijing underfoot this time next year. Meanwhile, the Sakura Nation spectators wore smug, petty grins. Some so-called genius. He's as good as dead. Matsumoto Ginzone, Sakura Nation's representative, looked utterly arrogant, not sparing Lu Changsheng a second glance. He even boasted that he could tear apart Huaxia's Sword Immortal with ease if given the chance. Lu Changsheng ignored the rant entirely, thinking calmly, While Pangu couldn't be summoned yet, the imperial deity, stabilized with national fortune, should still appear in the arena. With that thought, he sneered coldly. That snake head of yours will make a decent pot of soup. As both fighters took the field, the host Aphrodite announced the situation. Sakura Nation already held 2 victories. One more win, and Hashia will be forced to offer half its population and national fortune. She then laid out the rules of the match. Rule 1. Before each battle, 5 deities will be randomly generated. Each side may choose one to summon. Rule 2. Any deity summoned may fight only once and will never reappear. Rule 3. Best of 5. Only the victor survives. Defeat means divine annihilation. After hearing the rules, Lu Changsheng smiled coldly. Then today, personal grudges and national hatred will be settled together. As his words fell, Matsumoto Gunzong stepped into the divine revelation stone first. Without hesitation, he chose the deity with the highest compatibility, Yamada no Orochi. At the same time, 5 divine phantoms appeared before Lu Changsheng. When the audience saw that Pangu wasn't among them, disappointment spread instantly. Lu Changsheng, however, remained calm, his gaze fixed firmly on the black-robed emperor. In his heart, he whispered, "You should never have been forgotten nor buried by history's dust." He then recited the emperor's legendary life in a clear voice. The king of Qin swept the 6 states. Tigers gaze upon his boundless might. Lords of all realms bowed before him. A sovereign for the ages. A descendant unworthy, pays homage to Huaxia's first emperor, Ingzheng. The instant his words faded, the black-robed emperor's phantom trembled, and a mysterious, ancient light burst forth from within it. In the next heartbeat, the phantom rapidly solidified, and the overwhelming authority of a peerless emperor flooded the arena. Lu Changsheng had awakened an SS-tier deity, Qin Shi Huang, Ingzheng. The crowd erupted in deafening cheers. Heaven truly favored Hashia. The dean, however, remained calm, sighing with regret. What a pity, a human god. Among deities of the same tier, human gods were inherently weaker than beast gods. And Lu Changsheng had only just begun synchronizing with this human god. Against Yamada no Orochi, it would be suicide. Seeing a human god summoned, Matsumoto Gunzone burst out laughing. As expected, you couldn't summon a creator god. But I never imagined you'd end up with such a weak human god. Lu Changsheng ignored him completely. Instead, he continued recounting Qin Shi Huang's legendary achievements with utmost reverence. You unified the realm, standardized language and roads, bound the people of 7 nations together, and planted the idea of true unity in the hearts of Hashia. For countless generations, our people have remembered that our land must never be divided. You drove away invaders, raised the Great Wall to protect the nation, and unified thought by eradicating corrupt doctrines. As those historic feats were spoken aloud, the compatibility between Lu Changsheng and Qin Shi Huang skyrocketed to 60%. Only then did the crowd realize that Huaxia's history held an emperor of such unrivaled greatness. Matsumoto Gunzong, however, sneered. To him, a mere human god could never compare to Yamada no Orochi. Lu Changsheng quickly explained, "These arrogant ones are foreign oppressors who have long trampled Hashia, relying on despicable tactics without honor." Qin Shi Huang's eyes turned icy as he roared, "Mere outsiders dare oppress my Hashia?" Laughter exploded from the Sakura Nation stands. A human god talking big? Looks like he's forgotten how 2 Huasian gods were torn apart. Matsumoto Gunzong scoffed. A human god acting so arrogant, trying to challenge a true deity? How boring. I expected a real battle. Turns out you're not even fit to fill a gap in a bug god's teeth. Qin Shi Huang's expression hardened instantly. Golden light gathered in his hand, forming a radiant sword. My only regret in life is that I never slew a god. This blade is called Dingxin. He raised it high, as if proclaiming to the world, the emperor had returned. No one expected Huaxia's human god to truly step forward. The battle ignited as Yamada no Orochi lunged first. One strike alone shattered the ground where Qin Shi Huang stood. The emperor sneered. So this is Qin Shi Huang of Hashia? Pathetic before Yamada no Orochi. The Sakura Nation spectators grew unbearably arrogant, standing up and preparing to leave. Then, from within the dust, a terrifying aura surged. Qin Shi Huang waved his hand, and a blazing golden dragon roared forth. In an instant, one of Yamada no Orochi's heads was severed. The emperor froze, utterly stunned. Meanwhile, the Hashia stands exploded in screams. No one had expected a human god to be this powerful. Yamada no Orochi voiced its doubt. There's no divine power on you, yet your strength rivals that of God. How did you achieve this? Qin Shi Huang answered with unwavering resolve. This is the pre-Qin Shi refining art, forged by countless Huasian cultivators who dared defy the heavens, created to slay monsters like you. The serpent mocked him, dismissing it as nothing more than a cheap trick. In the next instant, its severed head regenerated once again. You're nothing but a human god. Mortals should kneel and submit to true gods. With jaws wide open, it lunged to tear him apart. The only response was Qin Shi Huang's relentless slashes. Heads fell one after another. Yet the beast only grew more ferocious, its regeneration accelerating instead of slowing. The Hashia stand sank into despair. For a moment, many believed this was something no human could ever overcome. Qin Shi Huang, however, showed no sign of retreat. He knew all too well the Hashia's fate rested on his shoulders. Raising the golden blade once more, he severed the newly regrown heads. But exhaustion finally caught up with him. His movement slowed, and Yamada no Orochi seized the opening, smashing him away like a cannonball. The blow worsened his already severe injuries. Yet Qin Shi Huang still struggled to rise, determined to defend Hashia's dignity with his own body. Tears streamed down the faces of Hashia spectators, their eyes filled with reverence and grief. The dean, grave-faced, whispered, "Should we concede? Qin Shi Huang has already given too much. We can't let our ancestor fall again." Just as the serpent's killing strike was about to land, a profound, mysterious aura erupted around Qin Shi Huang. A majestic dragon manifested out of thin air, wrapping around him as he felt the unmistakable presence of Great Qin. Countless heroic spirits surged forth from the blessed vessel, gathering behind Qin Shi Huang, the legendary heroes of the Qin Empire across the ages. They united in this moment, pouring all their power into him. Qin Shi Huang now stood like a war god descended upon the mortal realm, his gaze burning with unshakable resolve. With a single command, the heroic spirits charged Yamada no Orochi in a relentless assault. Matsumoto Genzong froze in disbelief. Damn it, this human god can summon so many human gods? He quickly regained his composure after spotting Lu Changsheng watching from the sidelines. In the next heartbeat, Matsumoto Genzong turned into a shadow, dagger in hand, lunging toward Lu Changsheng at blinding speed. The Dean and Lu Yanran felt their hearts leap into their throats. At the critical moment, Lu Changsheng slipped aside with ease, dodging the strike. He seized Matsumoto Genzong's wrist and slammed him hard into the ground. The audience was stunned by the sudden reversal, finally realizing that Lu Changsheng had been hiding his true strength all along. What they didn't know was that Pangu was his destined deity. Even with only 1% compatibility, it was enough to make Lu Changsheng's body as solid as bedrock. Matsumoto Genzong, however, kept talking tough, sneering that Lu Changsheng was nothing more than a brute who relied on raw strength. As he spoke, he unleashed Shadow Clone Technique, believing sheer numbers would crush Lu Changsheng. But he was far too naive. The moment the clones rushed in, Lu Changsheng grabbed them by the legs without hesitation. With a single explosive motion, he swung with all his strength and slammed Matsumoto Genzong into the ground, knocking him unconscious on the spot. The Hashia fangirls instantly went wild, shouting that they wanted to have his children. On the Sakura Nation side, the atmosphere flipped completely, their earlier smugness vanishing without a trace. The emperor broke into a cold sweat. Liu Changxing's presence was far beyond anything he had anticipated. Meanwhile, Yamada no Orochi, now cut off from Matsumoto Genzong's control, began suffering continuous blows, its massive body battered again and again. Driven into panic and rage, it demanded that all Sakura Nation citizens offer themselves as sacrifices. In an instant, the bodies of the spectators began to melt grotesquely, nourished by countless souls. Yamada no Orochi's wounds began to regenerate at a visible speed. Liu Changxing knew that once Matsumoto Genzong was dealt with, Yamada no Orochi would be forced back through the gate of creation. But this time, he refused to leave any loose ends. This threat had to be erased completely. Fully restored, Yamada no Orochi roared arrogantly, "Fools! Do you really think you can oppose me? Behind me stand millions of Sakura Nation citizens." Qin Shi Huang immediately pointed at the serpent and thundered. "So these people you speak of are nothing more than sacrifices for you to devour and heal yourself." Only then did the deceived Sakura people finally awaken, realizing that the god they had worshipped for generations was nothing more than a monster exploiting them for its own desires. Qin Shi Huang raised his sword once more and spoke calmly. "I spent my life on the battlefield. In my later years, I sought the path of immortality, and the world mocked me as a fool. Yet at the moment of death, I realized the truth. Though I could not ascend on the spot, I could allow all people to become dragons." As his words fell, countless ancient forces separated from his body, slowly flowing into the heroic spirits below. This was the longevity, chi-refining art he had pursued his entire life. At that moment, Liu Yanran discovered in shock that her compatibility with Bai Qi was steadily rising. Across Hashia, others felt their strength return, and even the blind regained their sight. After giving everything, Qin Shi Huang's appearance had grown old and worn, yet his posture remained unyielding. "My only wish," he said, "is for great Qin to enjoy eternal peace, and for all under heaven to stand like dragons." Huashia's people could no longer hold back their emotions, their hearts filled with reverence and gratitude. Even the king of the Eagle Nation was deeply moved, seeing a stark contrast with the Sakura gods. Then Qin Shi Huang's commanding voice echoed once more. "Where is the immortal armor of great Qin?" Instantly, all heroic spirits turned their gaze toward him. With a powerful wave of his hand, Qin Shi Huang roared, "Purge the outsiders." The heroic spirits charged toward great Qin without hesitation. Within moments, Yamada no Orochi was driven back repeatedly under their assault. Unwilling to accept defeat, the serpent tried its old trick again, demanding sacrifices from the Sakura Nation. Watching elite blessed ones being offered up, the emperor descended into panic. To prevent total annihilation, he led the people to their knees, begging Yamada no Orochi to accept death. The Sakura audience cursed in rage. A monster driven by selfish desire doesn't deserve to be called a god. Seeing the serpent at its limit, Qin Shi Huang summoned Dingxin once more. "It seems your people have chosen betrayal." With a thunderous shout, the blade fell. Yamada no Orochi's head hit the ground. As the serpent died, Liu Changxing finished off Matsumoto Genzong as well. The announcer's voice rang out. Victory to Huashia's Liu Changxing. The score now stood at 1-2, with Sakura Nation still leading by 1. Huashia's fighting spirit reignited. No one had imagined that Qin Shi Huang could slay a god with a mortal body. Yet none realized that Qin Shi Huang had reached his absolute limit. His face was pale, sweat beading on his brow, as if he might collapse at any moment. Only then did people notice something was wrong and begin asking questions. The dean finally explained, "A god's power comes from faith, but until now, no one even knew Qin Shi Huang existed." This battle had damaged his very foundation. Qin Shi Huang slowly raised his head. "Changsheng, I may not be able to walk this path with you much longer, but before I go, I have one final wish. May all people live in peace and joy." With those words, his form faded into a phantom. Cries swept across the arena. "It's our fault. We should never have forgotten you." At that moment, the system interface appeared, showing that Qin Shi Huang had not vanished. Once enough faith was gathered, he could be summoned again. As Lu Changxing's compatibility with Qin Shi Huang increased, his bond with Pangu rose by 1% as well. A thought struck him. If he gathered hundreds of deities, could Pangu truly return to the world? He immediately shared the news that Qin Shi Huang had not disappeared, assuring everyone that once his essence reformed, he would return. Only then did everyone finally feel at ease. The dean announced that Qin Shi Huang's deeds would be fully recorded, ensuring his sacrifice would be remembered for generations. At that moment, Sword Immortal Lu Qing returned to the Hashia arena, ready for the next battle. However, he was suddenly ambushed by Sakura Nation spies and forcibly dragged into a duel space. Only then did the Sword Immortal realize that the assassin was none other than his own secretary. She had endured 10 years of infiltration, all for this decisive moment. After all, among Huashia's forces, only Lu Qing had maintained an unbroken winning record against Sakura Nation. If Huaxia lost this decisive power, it would be strangled before it could even grow. Even so, the Sword Immortal showed no fear, calmly drawing his blade to face the enemy. Inside the arena, once the dean learned of the situation, he stepped forward without hesitation and declared that he would represent Huaxia in the next match. Lu Changsheng quickly tried to stop him. "Dean, I can still fight." The dean rejected him sternly. "Changsheng, don't push yourself. Leave the next battle to me." Lu Yanran and the others agreed, believing the well-learned dean offered the highest chance of victory. Yet Lu Changsheng remained unmoved. To win their trust, he spoke of a dream he once had. In it, an elderly immortal gently touched his head, and from that moment on, Huaxia's forgotten gods began appearing within his mind. Even after hearing this, the dean remained skeptical. Left with no choice, Lu Changxing approached the dean's deity, Susanoo, and recited the legends belonging to the phoenix. In the next instant, flames erupted around Susanoo. Bathed in fire, its feathers grew radiant as it was bestowed with divinity, evolving into a true phoenix. Only then did everyone realize that the dean's Susanoo originated from the ancient phoenix deity. Lu Changsheng then turned his gaze toward Lu Yanran. As he recounted Bai Qi's legendary achievements, Bai Qi's form gradually became solid. The crowd stood in pure shock. Lu Changsheng had completely won them over. Only after finishing all this did he slowly walk toward the arena. The announcer then revealed the next matchup. Lu Changxing's opponent was Sakura Nation's Sakura Soromomo. The deity she summoned was the foremost of the three great demon kings, Tamamo no Mae. When Tamamo no Mae first appeared, foreign spectators were instantly captivated by her beauty. Huaxia's audience, on the other hand, was left stunned. They knew almost nothing about this deity. Lu Changsheng merely gave a contemptuous smile. Everything was unfolding just as he had expected. Now that he understood which deity she had summoned, he already knew how to deal with her. The instant his hand touched the divine, awakening stone, a blinding light erupted, and a familiar figure appeared before him. The sight made everyone break out in a cold sweat. Wasn't his natal deity the human god Pangu? Summoning a beast god now was suicidal. Failure meant complete annihilation. Seeing this, the emperor burst into laughter. "Looks like this kid is as good as dead." Yet Lu Changsheng ignored the crowd and respectfully recited toward the phantom. "Martial Tian Pong guards the heavens. Iron armor gleams beneath the sun. The nine-toothed rake stands against the world. 36 transformations defy countless foes." Junior Lu Changsheng respectfully welcomes Martial Tian Pong. In the next second, an armored divine general appeared, gripping a nine-toothed rake. His overwhelming presence inspired instinctive awe. The Huaxia audience erupted in cheers. It was clear that Pangu's divine system was not limited to human gods. As a creator god, Pangu's lineage ran far deeper than anyone had imagined. Hashia finally saw a true path to resurgence. The emperor, however, sneered coldly. That guy won't last against Tamamo no Mei's allure. Soon, Marshal Tian Pong stood before Lu Changsheng. Annoyed, he demanded to know why this place was so noisy. Lu Changsheng quickly explained everything from beginning to end. He then respectfully asked Tian Pong to suppress the foreign deity. After hearing the whole story, Beiji suddenly put away his rake. Foreign oppression? What's it got to do with me? I hate fighting. All I want now is to admire the moon and stay quietly by her side. With that, he turned and began to leave. Lu Changsheng hurriedly called out, Marshal Tian Pong, please wait. Don't you want to see Chang'e and the Monkey King again? Beiji stopped in his tracks. This land barely has any incense left. It's practically an age of spiritual decline. And you still know about them? Lu Changsheng replied without hesitation. Not only do I know their stories, I can awaken them. Beiji scoffed. You? Really? Lu Changsheng laid out his terms. If he could awaken Hashia's gods, unite their power to tear apart the endless darkness, restore the dignity they once lost, and free Chang'e and the great sage from their suffering, would Beiji fight for Hashia? Before he could finish, Beiji revealed his true form and lunged forward in fury. Where did this brat come from, daring to toy with your grandpa Beiji? Left with no other choice, Lu Changsheng released the Phantom of Pangu to suppress him. The moment Beiji recognized the creator god, he cried out in excitement, Brother Pangu! The hand gripping Lu Changsheng's throat immediately loosened. Only then did Beiji realize how badly he had underestimated this young man. Seeing the change in his attitude, Lu Changsheng asked again whether he was willing to fight on Hashia's behalf. Marshal Tian Pong answered without hesitation. If even Lord Pangu is willing to stand with you, then I, old pig, can't afford to be picky. He turned his gaze toward Tamamo no Mei. Just a fox demon, daring to run wild? I'll deal with you soon enough. He immediately returned to human form, the nine-toothed rake firmly in hand. Sakura Nation's audience burst into laughter, convinced that the pig-faced warrior had been deluded by the fox's charms to act so arrogantly. Meanwhile, young women from the Peninsula Nation screamed in excitement, completely taken by Beiji's handsome appearance. At that moment, Sakura Soromomo stepped forward. She casually lowered her collar, attempting to seduce Lu Changsheng into joining Sakura Nation. She even offered to become his private companion. Then she sowed discord. We would never force a newly awakened talent to fight repeatedly like Hashia does. Most importantly, we would fully support your gods and pour every resource into your growth. Hashia's audience broke into cold sweats upon hearing this. After all, Lu Changsheng was Hashia's final hope. Losing him meant losing any chance of revival. Yet Lu Changsheng remained unmoved. Sakura Soromomo continued, We can grant you supreme authority, even offering myself to you. Her eyes brimmed with temptation. Some Hashia spectators wavered despite themselves. Sakura Nation was detestable, but her beauty was undeniable. Everyone waited for Lu Changsheng's decision. Without hesitation, he rejected her offer. Women only slowed the speed of his blade. Sakura Soromomo pressed on. If that's not enough, any female blessed of Sakura Nation can be yours. While negotiating, she secretly activated her charm technique. Calmly, Lu Changsheng opened his hand. The nine-toothed rake appeared instantly. Having reached an agreement with Beiji, he had already mastered its use. Seeing persuasion fail, Sakura Soromomo mocked him for not valuing life. But she failed to understand that when facing Sakura Nation, resistance was the only option. Retreat would only invite greater cruelty. As a son of Hashia, retreating now would betray the millions behind him. Hashia erupted in fury. Yielding only emboldens the oppressor. Those who offend Hashia shall be punished, no matter how far. At the same time, inside the Hall of All Gods, a young acolyte noticed in shock that Hashia's national fortune had doubled. As Lu Changsheng swung the rake down toward Sakura Soromomo, the second battle officially began. She instantly drew her folding fan to counter. Their first clash triggered a violent explosion. Though she blocked the blow, the overwhelming shockwave still forced her several steps back. Gone was her earlier composure. Pale and drenched in sweat, Sakura Soromomo realized how perfectly Liu Changsheng controlled his power and resolved to eliminate him immediately. As soon as she finished speaking, Sakura Soromomo formed hand seals and unleashed the shadow clone technique. In an instant, her clones flooded the entire arena. She then drew the long blade at her waist at blinding speed. A flash of cold light, 4 razor-sharp slashes tore toward Liu Changsheng. The sheer speed froze him in place for a split second. Fortunately, he recovered quickly, dropping to the ground and narrowly evading the deadly barrage. Seeing his awkward retreat, the Sakura Nation audience burst into laughter, mocking him for overestimating himself. Sakura Soromomo sneered. "So this is all you've got? Looks like I gave you too much credit. This next move will end you and show you just how foolish and insignificant you are." Her aura shifted abruptly, and an even fiercer assault erupted. Faced with her relentless pressure, Liu Changsheng decided to stop holding back. Gathering all his strength, he swung the rake with full force, the shockwave instantly shattering her offensive. Though Sakura Soromomo drew her blade to block in time, she was still swallowed by the remaining shockwave. Panic rippled through the Sakura audience. This kid was still hiding his true power. Confounded, Sakura Soromomo demanded, "Disguise myself perfectly. How did you find the real me?" Elsewhere, Tamamo no Mae attempted to bewitch Beiji, hoping to make him her devoted servant. Her appearance had already driven Peninsula Nation spectators into a frenzy. Even the dean grew worried. Throughout history, no one had ever escaped Tamamo no Mae's allure. Yet no one realized that Beiji's heart held room for only one. "Chang'e," he roared angrily. "An old demon like you dares compare herself to her?" The Sakura crowd exploded in rage. "A pig-faced brute dares insult our goddess? Go look at yourself first." Tamamo no Mae froze in disbelief. "You think I'm inferior to her?" Before she could react, Beiji swung his rake straight at her. With a light leap, she narrowly avoided the strike. Enraged, Tamamo no Mae seethed. Never in her life had anyone called her ugly. She immediately formed seals again, channeling massive demonic power, vowing revenge. In a burst of light, her body expanded several times over, terrifying pressure flooding the arena. Liu Changsheng recognized it instantly. One of Sakura Nation's 3 sacred treasures, the Yada Mirror. Empowered by it, Tamamo no Mae's demonic power increased tenfold. Yet Beiji showed no fear at all, shouting without hesitation, "Heaven and earth manifestation." His body swelled rapidly as well, radiating overwhelming dominance. Tamamo no Mae's eyes narrowed sharply. She struck first, unleashing celestial demon spirit strike straight at Beiji. Beiji casually rotated his rake, dispersing the attack with ease. Seizing the opening in her casting, he brought the rake down in a crushing blow. Even Liu Changsheng was stunned, an SS tier deity suppressing a 3S tier demon king with such ease was almost unthinkable. The scene completely shattered everyone's fixed beliefs about divine ranks and power. It was now clear that an awakening tier alone meant nothing. Tamamo no Mae slowly wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Her once alluring eyes were now completely consumed by rage. "You filthy pig, you've truly crossed the line." As she spread her arms wide, darkness instantly swallowed the entire mythic arena. With a sharp wave of her hand, countless foxfires surged down from the sky, rushing straight toward Beiji. "Die already, you disgusting pig." Watching Marshal Tian Pong about to be engulfed by the foxfire, the dean broke out in a cold sweat. The gap in awakening tears was already a fatal flaw, and now, backed by a divine artifact, Marshal Tian Pong seemed to have no chance of fighting back. Yet, Beiji merely raised his hand calmly and shouted toward the heavens, "Water, come." The moment his words fell, The sky twisted violently as storm clouds gathered and thunder rumbled. Thunder God and Lightning Mother had clearly answered Marshal Tianping's call, descending upon the arena. As Thunder God swung his twin hammers in sync with Lightning Mother's mirror, a heavy bolt of lightning crashed straight toward Tamamonome's front. She narrowly avoided the strike, but when she saw the scorched market left behind, she froze on the spot. Sakura Soromomo stared in disbelief. He was only an SS-tier deity, so how could his power be this terrifying? What she didn't realize was that this was only the beginning of the counterattack. High above, Beiji had already formed a massive, swirling vortex. Tamamonome was completely stunned. Where the hell did that much water come from? Beiji replied calmly, "Ignorant fool. This is the celestial river water." As his words fell, the celestial river water flowed like living spirits around him, forming an almost indestructible layer of protection. In the next moment, Beiji unleashed another elemental spell, Wind Command, and appeared directly in midair. Seeing Tamamonome steadily lose ground, the Sakura Nation audience couldn't help but pray for her, hoping she could turn the battle around. But Beiji was already fully prepared. Without hesitation, he launched his true counterattack. Fully aware of how devastating the strike would be, Tamamonome immediately summoned the Yata Mirror to block it. When the two forces collided head-on, a violent shockwave burst outward. A sharp crack echoed through the arena. The once invincible Yata Mirror shattered into pieces under Beiji's overwhelming impact. Tamamonome felt as if she'd been struck by lightning. She never imagined that the national divine artifact, the Yata Mirror, could be so fragile in his hands. The Hashia stands erupted in deafening cheers. As expected of the Sakura Nation, apparently, even a pile of trash could be worshipped like a treasure. In stark contrast, the Sakura Nation section fell into complete silence, morale crashing straight to rock bottom. Just as Beiji was about to deliver the finishing blow to Tamamonome, he realized his attack had passed straight through her. Before he could fully react, her true body had already reappeared in the distance. Facing such a troublesome opponent, Tamamonome couldn't help but feel a grim sense of awe. This pig demon wasn't just monstrously strong. He had mastered all kinds of bizarre divine arts, and his reserves of power completely eclipsed her own. Gritting her teeth, she shot Beiji a vicious glare. What kind of insane luck did Hashia have to summon such a nightmare of a monster? At that moment, Beiji's disdainful voice rang out again. A cheap escape trick? I can do that too. In the next instant, his figure vanished like a phantom and reappeared right in front of Tamamonome. She didn't even have time to react before the nine-tooth rake sent her flying several meters away. Tamamonome barely managed to brace herself with one hand to stop from collapsing completely. At the same time, a mouthful of blood burst from her lips. Her face twisted with rage and frustration. Damn pig demon, you really know how to show off. With that, she suddenly spread her arms wide, preparing to summon new deities to fight for her. As her voice fell, three divine phantoms slowly emerged above the arena. The Sakura Nation crowd instantly perked up. Summoning legendary gods like this, Hashia was surely doomed now. After all, these deities were regarded as supreme, untouchable beings in their hearts. The moment he appeared, Amaterasu entered a state of Oni fury, sword formations filling the space around him like a reaper from hell. Meanwhile, Oyamitsumi raised both arms and began chanting an incantation, torrents of power gathering toward her body. Even as the enemy's assault crashed across the arena like a raging tsunami, Beiji remained unfazed, quietly uttering four words: 36 transformations. In the next instant, he transformed into an eagle, effortlessly dodging every incoming attack. Was shameless fox, calling in three helpers at once. Fine then, let me make this clear. No matter who shows up today, it won't change a thing. Tamamonome let out a cold laugh. And you're not afraid of hiding like a turtle forever? Beiji answered calmly, I'm waiting for a moment that's enough to end you. As he spoke, powerful golden light began radiating from his body. With a sweeping motion of his hand, the celestial river water transformed into a massive water dragon, spiraling high above. After that, Beiji looked down with contempt and shouted at the beast gods, "I am a martial Tian Pong, ruler of the celestial river. Sakura and nation deities, step forward and face your death." The moment his words fell, he swung the rake downward with full force. Instantly, streams of water dragons shot forward like arrows released from a bow, surging straight toward the Sakura nation gods, who could only watch in horror as they closed in. In a single heartbeat, Oyamuru and Shuten Doji were completely swallowed by the celestial river water. Only Amaterasu managed to escape by sheer luck. Having never suffered such humiliation, his face twisted with rage as he swore to make Beiji die a miserable death. Without hesitation, he condensed a blazing sphere of light in his palm, then hurled it violently toward Beiji. Beiji barely managed to block the attack, yet the scattered shockwaves still engulfed him entirely. Seeing this, the Sakura Nation crowd erupted in cheers, mocking Beiji as nothing more than a dead pig, utterly unworthy of being mentioned alongside Amaterasu. As Beiji lay slammed to the ground, the Hashia audience began to panic. Martial Tian Pong had already done more than enough. Maybe surrendering was the wiser choice. At that moment, Amaterasu stepped up behind Beiji, sneering that he was nothing but livestock waiting to be slaughtered. Just as Amaterasu moved in for the killing blow, golden light suddenly burst from Beiji's body. With the activation of intercoming supreme treasure, the severely injured Beiji slowly rose to his feet. Before Amaterasu could even react, Beiji shot out his hand and clamped it around his throat. When Amaterasu tried to unleash divine punishment to escape, he was horrified to find his divine power instantly drained, leaving him unable to release even a trace of holy light. Beiji had already shifted back into his beast form, a faint smile appearing on his face. "I am a pig," he admitted, "but I'm not one that gets slaughtered." With that, he slammed Amaterasu viciously into the ground. The sight left everyone stunned. They had always known Beiji for his brute strength, but no one expected him to be so cunning and decisive as well. Before long, Beiji shattered Amaterasu's divine soul completely. Even so, Amaterasu's hatred lingered, and before fading away, he swore to make Beiji pay a terrible price. Beiji ignored him completely and strode straight toward the true instigator behind it all, Tamamo no Mae. With Tamamo no Mae's death, Hashia secured its victory in the second arena match. Yet the Hashia crowd felt no joy at all. Beiji had exhausted every last trace of his core power, leaving his entire body weak and unsteady. With a dull thud, he dropped to his knees. Lu Changsheng rushed forward to support him, but before he could reach him, Beiji forced himself to raise a hand and stop him. His voice was faint. "Changsheng, don't come any closer. I don't want you to see me like this." His gaze slowly lost focus as his consciousness drifted into memories of the past. In those memories, he had once been a towering hero, but because of his cowardice, everyone who mattered to him had slipped away. If only he had been braver back then. Would his fate with Chang'e, his senior brother, and his master have turned out differently? "Promise me this," he whispered. "If I die, find them, bring them to my grave, and tell them that this old pig was never a coward." Seeing Beiji's life force fading fast, Lu Changsheng suddenly turned and shouted toward the Hashia stands, "People of Hashia, offer your devotion to our god." The dean immediately understood what he meant. Without a second thought, he called out to the crowd, ordering them to prepare offerings at once. Outside the arena, civilians hurried to present whatever offerings they had at home, all in hopes of lending Beiji their strength. As vital energy from across the world gathered, Beiji's divine soul erupted in blinding light. His once dull eyes slowly opened again. Catching sight of Lu Changsheng's reddened eyes, Beiji smiled faintly. "Changsheng," he said softly, "a real man doesn't cry so easily. Look, I'm still alive, aren't I? You brat. We won, so why the long face? As he spoke, his gaze drifted toward the horizon. From here on out, the road is yours to walk. As for me, it's time I went to find my white moonlight. I shouldn't keep her waiting. Under Lu Changsheng's watchful eyes, Beiji slowly walked toward the edge of the sky. Just before leaving, he reminded him, Changsheng, don't forget the promise you made. Lu Changsheng answered firmly, rest assured, Marshal Tian Pong. Lu Changsheng, will honor my word. Since this is the path you chose, all I can do is see you off. With that, Beiji's figure vanished completely from the arena. Witnessing this, the dean issued an immediate order. From this moment on, record the heroic deeds of Marshal Tian Pong, Zhugang Lai, in the Hashia Divine Archives in full detail. This time, we will not allow Hashia's gods to be forgotten again. At the same moment, within Hashia's Hall of All Gods, Beiji's divine image took its seat among the pantheon. Just after Beiji secured victory in the second match, the battle between the Sword Immortal and the Sakura Nation's Maiko also came to an end. As the blade sliced across her body, shock filled Maiko's face. After decades of careful planning, she believed she fully understood the Sword Immortal's strength. Yet even now, the power he displayed remained completely beyond her grasp. The moment the fight ended, the Sword Immortal rushed straight toward the mythic arena. In his mind, there was only one goal left, to save Hashia. At the same time, inside the arena, the host announced the beginning of the final showdown. The victor would claim half of the defeated nation's land and population. He then instructed both sides to prepare to take the stage. Seeing this, I immediately stood up, but at that moment, a large hand pressed down on my shoulder. The city lord spoke with unwavering resolve. Changsheng, you've already done more than enough. Leave the rest to me. No matter how much I insisted that I understood Hashia's hidden divine history, the city lord remained unmoved. Changsheng, with your current level of compatibility, you can't handle Sakura Nation's final trump card. This battle is mine. Hashia's future still needs you. As his words fell, a divine phantom appeared. Zhao Zilong of Changshan, the ever-victorious general. The very next second, a voice cut through our argument. Old Bai, let me handle this. It was the Sword Immortal, arriving just in time. When the city lord saw it was him, the tension finally eased. I thought you wouldn't make it. The Sword Immortal replied calmly, blame those damn Sakura Nation tricks. I almost got delayed on matters of national importance. With only 30 seconds left before the match began, the Sword Immortal left behind a single sentence. I'll win this fight, and stepped onto the arena without hesitation. Lu Qing of Hashia stands here. Sakura Nation, step forward and die. Meanwhile, in the Sakura Nation stands, a figure had been lounging lazily, only stretching slowly after hearing the Sword Immortal's challenge. In the next instant, he vanished without warning, reappearing at the center of the arena as he coldly announced, Sakura Nation, Yamada Takumi. When the Sakura Nation crowd saw who it was, they erupted into thunderous cheers, utterly convinced the outcome was already decided. On the Hashia side, however, fear spread across everyone's faces. No one expected Yamada Takumi, a true divine child, to personally step onto the god arena. Seeing my confusion, the dean quickly explained in a low voice that Yamada Takumi was the only divine child Sakura Nation had produced in 10,000 years. He was hailed as an SS-tier, God-favored prodigy, a once-in-a-millennium talent of the Empire. But his methods were infamous, cruel, and utterly shameless. On the very day of his 18th birthday coming-of-age ceremony, he personally slaughtered Hashia's third-ranked expert, Luo Jun. Not stopping there, he brutally murdered Luo Jun's natal deity, the East Sea Dragon King. What made it even more unforgivable was that, to please his sister, he forcibly stripped the Dragon King's tendons and forged them into a longbow. Yamada Takumi's own natal deity was one of Sakura Nation's supreme three noble gods, with a compatibility exceeding an astonishing 80%. Learning of his atrocities, I clenched my fists instinctively, swearing in silence that if the Sword Immortal were to fall, I would challenge Yamada Takumi to a divine war myself. On the arena, Yamada Takumi looked down at Lu Qing with open contempt. Huaxia's undefeated sword immortal? You won't be walking out of this arena alive today. Lu Qing drew his sword without hesitation, his voice filled with fury. You monstrous scourge. If you hadn't slaughtered the East Sea Dragon King 10 years ago, stripping Huaxia of its divine protection, Huasia would never have suffered years of devastating drought. Its people would never have been driven to starvation and despair. Countless lives were lost in that horrific famine. All of that blood is on your hands. Today, I will deliver justice in heaven's stead. Hearing this, Yamada Takumi burst into laughter. Is that so? Then you should feel honored. After all, not everyone is worthy of becoming a weapon for a god-favored of Amaterasu. His bones will shine again in my sister's hands. As for those damn, starving peasants, who told them not to submit to the Sakura nation sooner? At those words, the crowd's fury finally erupted. This was selfishness and cruelty taken to the extreme, a nation willing to drag others into hell just to satisfy its own narrow interests. I fell into thought. The man's arrogance and disdain were no longer concealed. Every sentence he spoke flaunted Sakura Nation's tyranny disguised as benevolence, exposing a brutal truth. Weak nations have no diplomacy. That was why this battle had to be won completely, decisively, until they were forced to accept defeat. At that moment, the host began confirming the fighter's information. Yamada Takumi, an SS tier god favored, summoning a 3S tier deity Susanoo. Lu Qing, by comparison, was an entire tier lower, summoning only an SS tier deity, Li Bai. Seeing Huaxia at a clear disadvantage, Eagle Nation and Goryeo Nation immediately ordered preparations in secret, planning to declare war the moment Huaxia's sword immortal fell and carve up the defeated nation. Indra Nation proved even more ruthless. Its representatives openly mocked Huaxia and brazenly ordered word sent to Upali, declaring that Huaxia would become a sacrifice to Shiva. On the mythic arena, several divine phantoms glowing with mysterious light slowly rose behind Yamada Takumi. With a sharp wave of his hand, Susanoo's phantom instantly solidified. The Sakura Nation crowd erupted into madness. Yamada clearly intended to tear apart Huaxia's deity this time. On Lu Qing's side, the phantom of Li Bai, the poet immortal, had already appeared at his shoulder. With both combatants successfully summoning their deities, this ultimate battle, one that would decide fate itself, officially began. Li Bai tilted his head back slightly and took a calm sip of wine. He murmured to himself, This feels incredible. And yet, in times like these, a jug of wine among the flowers, drinking alone with no companions. I wonder where Gao Shi, Haoren, and Chengfu are now. Are they gazing upon this vast, starry sky with me? Seeing that Li Bai didn't even acknowledge him, Yamada Takumi was consumed by rage. He spread his arms as lightning gathered, coldly demanding, Are Huaxia's gods all this arrogant? With a thunderous roar, a long sword crashed down like a falling meteor toward the sword immortal. Divine Might Feather Slash, Yamada Takumi's legendary signature move. As the dust finally settled, a brutal scene was revealed. Lu Qing stood on the arena, missing one arm, blood soaking the ground beneath him. Yamada Takumi sneered arrogantly. A mere ant dares look down on me? At the same time, Susanoo launched a relentless assault against Li Bai. The non-stop sounds of violent clashes echoed from behind. Lu Qing knew all too well. If he wanted to win, he would have to pay an unbearable price. Without hesitation, he stepped toward Yamada Takumi. At first, the Huaxiao audience couldn't understand what he was doing. Then they heard Lu Qing chant softly, When the Tao fruit is complete, the 5 eyes awaken. When the sun wheel rises, the stars fade. In the next instant, a golden sword hilt manifested before his chest. The dean cried out in shock. It was a divine sword formed from the sword immortal's Tao fruit. Startled, I immediately asked the dean what a Tao fruit truly was. He explained gravely, Huaxia's God-blessed eventually condense an origin core. Tao, fruits, divine embryos, golden cores, they are all manifestations of that origin. Once the origin core is unleashed, it becomes a matter of life or death. Understanding this, I clench my fists. Sword Immortal Lu Qing was gambling with his life. Across the arena, Yamada Takumi paled and shouted, "Have you lost your mind? You're burning your origin core to amplify your divinity. Even if you win, you won't live much longer." Lu Qing replied calmly, "Decades of fighting foreign tribes beyond the borders, countless corpses forged my sword heart Dao fruit. Destroying it today is regrettable, but this battle concerns Huaxia's national fortune. As Huaxia's sword immortal, I have no regrets." With a low command from Lu Qing, "Sword, come." Every sword in the stands trembled and leapt from its sheath. In the next second, they all transformed into pure energy, floating in midair. At the very moment Lu Qing swung his blade, Yamada Takumi finally panicked. He knew that if this strike landed, death was certain. He immediately activated Flash Step, desperately trying to widen the distance. Yet no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape the sword's reach. Watching this, Susanoo sighed helplessly. "It seems I'll have to finish this quickly." As he spoke, he raised his arm into the air and declared, "Heavenly Dominion Field." In an instant, massive bolts of violet lightning surged forward, crashing down toward Li Bai. Yet Li Bai's lips curled into a faint smile. He recited loudly, "When the great rock rises with the wind, it soars 90,000 miles." As his sword came down, a golden rock shot straight into the sky. With a deafening bang, the barrier formed by the Heavenly Dominion Field shattered instantly. Watching this, Susanoo let out a cold chuckle. "Not bad. This is getting interesting." He raised his arm once more and commanded, "Come forth, Kusanagi sword." Moments later, a uniquely forged longsword appeared in his grasp. Heaven's judgment has arrived." Susanoo leveled the blade at Li Bai, and in the blink of an eye, countless violet lightning bolts poured down along the sword's arc. Caught completely off guard, Li Bai was immobilized, trapped within the storm of lightning, letting out a pained cry. At the same time, far from the arena, the supreme leaders of multiple nations had already gathered. A senior official from the Tonju nation spoke first. "The outcome is decided. It is time to discuss the division of Huaxia's territory." With a wave of his hand, a detailed map of Huaxia appeared before everyone. As the victorious nation, the Sakura nation will take half of Huaxia's land and population. As for us, the Tianju nation does not ask for much. 1/3 of what remains will suffice. Hearing this, a high-ranking official from the Bangzi nation immediately objected. "Why should Tianju take the largest share while we're left with scraps? This is unfair." The Tianju official stepped forward calmly. In the next instant, he slapped the Bangzi official to the ground without hesitation. "Are you questioning my decision? If so, I wouldn't mind letting Shiva's radiance descend upon Halcyon." Pale with terror, the Bangzi official could only tremble and nod in agreement. Back on the arena, Lu Qing was unleashing a relentless assault against Yamada Takumi. When the two finally separated for a brief moment, Yamada Takumi clenched his teeth in fury, mind and spirit as one. Lu Qing's blade was terrifyingly sharp. His essence, focus, and will had fused into a near-perfect state, far surpassing that of an ordinary double SS rank God-blessed. Realizing this, Yamada knew one thing for certain. If he didn't act now, he would lose this match. He turned his gaze to Lu Qing and said coldly, "This fight won't last much longer for you. Once your origin core burns out, you'll be nothing more than a lamb waiting for slaughter. But I'll give you one final chance. Join the Sakura Nation, and I'll grant you supreme power and endless wealth. And I'll even spare no effort to help restore your origin core. What do you say?" Lu Qing didn't bother responding. Instead, he raised his sword and charged straight at him once more. With a loud clang, Yamada Takumi was blasted backward again by the overwhelming force. Lu Qing spoke calmly, his words razor sharp. "I think I see it now, fear in your eyes." Yamada lifted his gaze toward the sky and sneered. So what if there is? I admit I'm not your match right now, but Huaxia's gods are about to collapse. Even under crushing pressure, Li Bai clenched his teeth and endured, constantly reminding himself that he could not fall here. Seeing this, the Emperor of Sakura Nation was furious. In his eyes, no matter how strong Huaxia's resolve was, annihilation was only a matter of time. Watching everything unfold, I knew one thing clearly. If I didn't act now, Huaxia would truly lose this decisive battle. Acting on instinct, I shouted toward Lu Qing on the arena, Sword Immortal. Seize joy while you can, and never let the golden cup sit empty beneath the moon. To my surprise, the entire Huaxia audience echoed the very same words in unison. It was the power carried within that line of poetry that made Li Bai feel something breaking free from its restraints. As several drops of wine glowing with golden light touched his lips, an invisible barrier instantly formed, cutting off every bolt of lightning. The Sakura Nation crowd cried out in shock. How is this possible? How did he break free from divine punishment? Susanoo finally realized what was happening. His opponent had been infused with a special form of divinity. Without hesitation, he slowly drew the Kusanagi sword, murmuring, I never thought that after millions of years, I'd draw this blade again. Foreign god, are you ready to die? Feeling the terrifying pressure emanating from the blade, Li Bai knew he couldn't meet it head-on. Susanoo let out a cold laugh. Your tricks, before me, are no better than a trainee who's practiced for 2.5 years and still hasn't debuted. As he spoke, he launched another ferocious assault on Li Bai. Seeing this, Yamada Takumi regained his confidence. I took your strongest attack, and it couldn't even break my body. I possess thunder armor and a martial god physique. Meanwhile, the power you gain by burning your origin core won't last much longer. So tell me, how do you plan to fight me? Lu Qing stood tall and answered firmly, if one sword isn't enough, then I'll strike again. If 1,000 swords fail, then I'll swing 10,000. No matter how difficult the road ahead, I will walk it. The moment those words fell, Lu Qing swung his sword and charged straight at Yamada Takumi. On the other side, Susanoo roared, demanding to know whether Li Bai dared to draw his blade and fight. To his surprise, Li Bai didn't answer at all. Instead, he tilted his head back and took another drink. Susanoo exploded in fury. Are all Huaxia's gods this arrogant? What he never expected was that his full-powered slash suddenly struck nothing but empty air. Then he sensed something wrong above him, a turquoise-green lotus phantom blooming in midair. This was Li Bai's sword technique after drawing his blade, Azure Lotus, one sword. After executing it, Li Bai spoke calmly. This strike has a name, Azure Lotus Sword Song. Yet to Li Bai's shock, Susanoo avoided every single blade perfectly, and with heavenly thunder, myriad manifestations, forcibly disrupted the Azure Lotus Sword Song in an instant. Witnessing this, the Huaxia audience let out a collective sigh. The Sword Immortal is truly powerful, but Susanoo is Sakura's strongest war god. Is Sakura's supreme deity truly unbeatable? Even the dean looked dejected. According to the records, the Sword Immortal's strongest move, the Azure Lotus Sword Song, had already been used. There might be no way left to suppress the Sakura god. Huaxia may truly be doomed this time. Hearing this, panic surged through me. No, there's still hope. The Sword Immortal, I remember, is capable of far more than this. At the same time, Susanoo launched another offensive. Your techniques are impressive. If your opponent weren't me, Sakura would have already fallen. But unfortunately, you face the one who carries Sakura's hope. And so, I fight for the people of Sakura. Though forced back, Li Bai showed no fear and shot back. Are you truly fighting for the people? All I see in you is slaughter and brutality. Your lofty words are nothing more than excuses to mask your true nature. At that, Susanoo's gaze turned icy. A low-tier god dares judge me? This time, I'll shut that filthy mouth of yours. With a thunderous clash, his strike sent Li Bai flying backward. Worse still, the Azure Lotus Sword in Li Bai's hand shattered into pieces. The Hashia crowd froze in disbelief. Impossible! The sword immortal's blade broke? Are Sakura's 3S tier gods truly invincible? Gravely wounded, Li Bai dropped to one knee, murmuring, "The road is hard. The road is hard. I survived the passing years of Chang'an, only to die today by the hand of a foreign god." Seeing everything unfold, I hesitated no longer and shouted, "Everyone, open your books, record the poems, and recite with me. Only then can we grant the sword immortal new divinity." No, let me correct myself. He is the poet immortal, Li Bai. With that, I led the crowd in recitation. Laughing toward the heavens, I step out the door. How could we be mere weeds? When the long wind breaks the waves, I will hoist my sails and cross the sea. The verses thundered through the stands. Li Bai, who had been prepared for death, suddenly felt his aura surge explosively. A strange sense of familiarity welled up within him. Though he had never heard these lines before, they felt etched into his blood, as if power from 1,000 years ago had returned to him. Not far away, Susanoo stared in shock, unable to comprehend why his opponent's presence had multiplied several times over. As he hesitated, I cried out, "Sword energy spans 30,000 miles. One blade chills 19 provinces." In the next instant, a terrifying sword light tore towards Susanoo. When the radiance faded, the now disfigured Susanoo ground his teeth. How is this possible? He then assumed a battle stance and roared, "Hashia insects, you have truly enraged me." Seeing their god engulfed in dense, deathly aura, the Sakura Nation spectators were struck with horror. They couldn't understand why the war god, who commanded heavenly thunder, myriad manifestations, harbored such darkness and decay. His former divinity and pride were gone, leaving only naked bloodlust. I could tell immediately that something was off. After all, Yamada Takumi had always treated human lives as worthless, and a god-blessed personality is deeply intertwined with their bound deity, which means Susanoo's true nature is steeped in brutality and slaughter. On the arena, Susanoo spoke slowly. "Hashia God, are you ready? I will let you die in the most cruel and helpless darkness imaginable." Hearing this, Li Bai instantly became alert. The moment Susanoo uttered the word decay, vast waves of black mist surged outward, spreading in all directions. Seeing this, I clench my fists. Once Susanoo falls into darkness, his abilities become completely unpredictable, far more elusive and far harder to deal with. For the Sword Immortal, this was nothing short of a catastrophe. Knowing he couldn't touch the black mist, Li Bai could only retreat again and again, narrowly avoiding its reach. But even the best defense has its gaps. The mist suddenly launched a sneak attack from behind. In the blink of an eye, Li Bai was swallowed whole by the darkness. The Dean staggered, a single thought flashing through his mind: it's over. Hashia is truly finished. Fortunately, the barrier that had blocked earlier skills once again saved Li Bai's life. Yet the Hashia audience soon realized something was terribly wrong. The one-spirited sword immortal Li Bai had aged rapidly, his hair and beard turning completely white in moments. Liu Yanran was the first to grasp the truth. Susanoo seemed to wield the power of time itself, making it impossible for the sword immortal to compete at his current state. But to me, there's still hope. The world knows Li Bai as peerless with the sword, yet in Hashia's glorious history, his brightest title had always been Poet Immortal. Meanwhile, on the arena, seeing Hashia's god corroded by decay, Susanoo swung his sword decisively, intent on ending the battle. The immense force sent Li Bai flying, crashing down more than 10 meters away. Susanoo mocked coldly, "Pathetic Hashia god. Once I capture you, I'll grind every bone in your body to dust and let your divine seat be trampled by the people of Sakura. Only then will my heart be satisfied." A wave of helplessness washed over Li Bai. Is this really where it ends for me? Watching everything unfold, I bit down hard. I could make Li Bai stand again, but repeatedly bestowing divinity would inflict unbearable damage on my body. Yet seeing the panic and despair on everyone's faces behind me, I knew there was no time to hesitate. So I threw everything on the line and shouted toward the arena. The living are but passing travelers. The dead return home. Heaven and earth are but an inn. Together we mourn the dust of 10,000 ages. Everyone instantly understood I was granting the sword immortal new divinity. And at that very moment, the backlash from repeatedly forcing divine empowerment finally surfaced. The dean shouted urgently, "Changshan, stop! If you keep this up, your body won't survive." But I refused to stop, gritting my teeth and repeating the verse despite the pain. When those words reached Li Bai's ears, he suddenly realized that before the vast flow of time, life's hardships were nothing to fear. As I poured out my last strength and cried the most crucial line, "Heaven gave me talent for a reason. Though gold be spent, it will return again." Li Bai seemed to enter a state beyond all distractions, his once fading aura surging explosively. In the next instant, he vanished from where he stood, and with every step, a phantom azure lotus bloomed beneath his feet. With a sharp clang, Li Bai drew his sword. At the same time, he murmured, "With the 7-star steps beneath my feet, I drunkenly gather sun, moon, and stars." Feeling his own power being unraveled by that sword aura, Susanoo's eyes finally filled with fear. He could not comprehend how his opponent had also grasped the force of time itself. Meanwhile, though lying on the ground, Yamada Takumi laughed, convinced the battle was already his. In his eyes, Lu Qing, who had burned his Dao fruit, was nothing more than a dying ember, someone even a newly awakened God-blessed could defeat. Turning his gaze to the other battlefield, he sneered, "So what if your sword immortal suppresses my bound deity? The outcome of this fight will be decided very soon." Even Susanoo had to admit that Li Bai was the most resilient opponent he had ever faced. Yet he did not believe himself burdened by sin. To him, without a past forged in slaughter and blood, he would never have been chosen to stand for the Sakura nation in this final battle. Seeing this, the Sakura audience stopped complaining and instead unanimously embraced this path of proving the Tao through killing. Some even believed that, despite standing in darkness, Susanoo was still protecting his nation in his own way. Watching his country's power and momentum surge, the emperor burst into laughter, convinced that with such faith-driven strength, Hashia was destined to fall. Back on the arena, Li Bai was once again forced back by Susanoo's overwhelming assault. He could clearly feel it. After entering an explosive state, Susanoo's divine power had multiplied several times over. Suddenly, a wave of danger crashed toward him. Susanoo had already condensed a volatile mass of lightning. Realizing the threat, Li Bai immediately retreated, trying to widen the distance. But the attack was far too fast. He was forced to block it head-on with his sword. In the next instant, his entire body was engulfed by terrifying lightning. Seeing this, panic seized me. Bestowing divinity on other gods came at the cost of my origin core, and in such a short time, I'd already done so for several deities. As for Li Bai, even during the golden age of the Tang dynasty, surrounded by countless scholars, he alone stood above all and was revered as the poet immortal. For 1,000 years after, no one could truly eclipse his brilliance. His power should never have been limited to this. Yet now, with his origin core damaged and body gravely wounded, he likely could not withstand another act of divine empowerment. But when I looked at Li Bai, lying on the ground barely clinging to life, and saw the despair etched across the faces of my fellow Hashia people, I knew there was no time left to weigh the cost. To fully awaken Li Bai's divinity as the poet immortal, I had to find one decisive verse. I rapidly sifted through countless poems in my mind. Then, at one moment, Song on the River caught my attention. Compared to his other works, this poem was rarely mentioned even in eras where cultural heritage remained intact. It was born from Li Bai's sense of being trapped by fate. Precisely because of that, it could revive memories long buried and reignite his identity as the poet immortal. Without hesitation, I shouted toward the arena. With passion, my brush shakes the 5 peaks. When the poem is done, I laugh proudly over vast lands. The instant those words reached Li Bai, his entire being jolted, his spirit surging awake. It was as if a familiar figure brushed past him, leaving behind a whisper. Li Bai will write verses that overshadow all poets of past and present. At the same time, other heroic phantoms appeared, praising Bring in the wine and departing from Baidi City at dawn as lines destined to endure through the ages. In that moment, Li Bai felt fully immersed, as though he were the very protagonist standing at the center of history. Seeing Li Bai standing motionless on the arena, anxiety crept across my face. Had he failed to awaken the divinity of the poet immortal? Then, in the very next instant, the sword in Li Bai's hand projected the phantom of a calligraphy brush, as the verse breaking the shackles of the past. Only now do I know who I truly am echoed across the arena. A turquoise-green sword light pierced straight through Susanoo in the blink of an eye. Even at the moment of death, he could not understand. He had clearly defeated this Hashia god, so how could such overwhelming power still erupt? Li Bai spoke calmly. This sword embodies the youthful spirit I carried as the poet immortal. Gazing at Susanoo, now lying lifeless on the ground, Li Bai continued, "You no longer need to bear this heavy body. Accept defeat and fade away." As his words fell, Susanoo's body began to dissolve into nothingness. The sudden turn of events left Yamada Takumi momentarily stunned. Yet in his mind, it was no great loss. Even if the god had fallen, killing Lu Qing would still secure victory. With that thought, Yamada Takumi moved to act at once. But to his utter shock, Lu Qing suddenly struck out, his sword piercing straight through Yamada's abdomen. At that moment, Yamada Takumi's thoughts mirrored those of Susanoo just before his demise. The Sakura audience stood frozen in disbelief, fully aware of what this outcome meant for them. In contrast, the Hashia crowd erupted in thunderous cheers, raising their arms and shouting, "Lord Lu, the eternal god." Still, some sharp-eyed observers noticed something unusual about the sword immortal. Lu Qing was now seated cross-legged on the arena floor. Behind him, the divine projection of Li Bai had taken on an entirely new form. Moments later, the system interface announced the simultaneous advancement of both Lu Qing and Li Bai. Seeing this, the dean was overjoyed. The sword immortal has reforged his Tao foundation. Not only has he undergone rebirth, but both of them have broken through. The city lord voiced his confusion. What does this new Tao fruit signify? The dean answered with 4 words: poetry and sword, unmatched. I couldn't hide my joy either. The city lord praised me generously. Who would have thought, Changsheng, that you'd bring us so many miracles? At the center of the arena, Li Bai recited, "Young nobles ride east of the city, silver saddles, white steeds, crossing the spring wind." A surge of energy began to gather at Lu Qing's severed arm. Moments later, a brand new arm was fully formed. Just as Lu Qing clasped his fists toward me in thanks, the host officially announced the result. Hashia had claimed victory in the final battle. As the host invited the combatants to step forward and claim their spoils, the Hashia crowd shouted eagerly, "Lord Lu, go. You've earned the right to stand for Hashia and claim the victor's glory." Seeing 2 plunder options appear on the interface, I fell into brief contemplation. Hashia never lacked talent. Territory, however, meant far greater resources than population alone. Without hesitation, I chose the second option, claiming half of Sakura's national fortune and territory. The host smiled knowingly at my decision. In the next instant, a massive crimson dragon coiled through the cosmos. With a single bite, it tore away vast swathes of Sakura's land, watching their territory vanish from the map. The Sakura Emperor collapsed in shock, losing consciousness on the spot. According to the host's report, after absorbing Sakura's national power, Huaxia's world ranking leapt from 32nd to 9th. However, just after the host declared the end of the first round of preliminaries, the Roman nation immediately applied to challenge Sakura in the arena. The Indra nation followed suit without delay. Seeing the flood of challenges aimed at Sakura, the city lord grew puzzled. He couldn't understand why a former ally had suddenly become the target of collective assault. In response, he gave an answer that summed it up perfectly: used and discarded. The very next second, he realized his compatibility with Pangu had increased by 10%. Seeing the message displayed on the system panel, he immediately understood summoning different deities could raise the compatibility of his bound deity. And as long as Hashia's national fortune continued to grow, summoning Pangu on the mythic arena might not be an impossible dream after all. As for divinity traits, they were most likely obtained from the divinity bestowed upon deities, granting permanent boosts across multiple enhancement effects. Meanwhile, his bound cultivation art, the 9-cycle mystic art, could not only negate all damage to the divine soul, but also restore the damage he had previously suffered when granting divinity. In other words, he could now bestow divinity upon far more obscure deities without worrying about harming his divine soul in the slightest. Unbeknownst to him, within the Avicii Inferno of Psycheo in the Sakura Nation, after learning that he had single-handedly reversed Hashia's disadvantage, and had even annihilated her younger brother's soul entirely, Amaterasu felt no sorrow at all. Her lips curled into a smile as she murmured that this was interesting. It was only when news arrived that, following Sakura Nation's defeat, its allied states had turned on it and declared war, that her expression darkened instantly, cursing them as shameless opportunists. Black energy gathered in her palm as she issued an order for Sakura Nation to forfeit this round, declaring that once she was prepared, she would settle every account one by one. As she spoke, she injected the dark energy into the body before her, which was none other than her external vessel, Yama. Sensing the eerie aura radiating from Amaterasu, her subordinates trembled uncontrollably, unable to comprehend how their once noble and sacred guardian deity had become so chilling and sinister. Soon, news of Sakura Nation's forfeit reached the arena, and the price they had to pay was clear. Kyoto City would be ceded to the nation that had last defeated Sakura Nation. As despair spread across the faces of Kyoto's citizens upon hearing the news, Hashia's audience, on the other hand, felt a surge of delight. None of them had expected such an unexpected gain. Seeing this, the dean sighed and said, "This is the price of failure." Those civilians branded with slave marks would lose their divinity and ultimately be reduced to expendable resources in foreign lands, dying far from home. Hashia itself also had 3 cities reassigned to other nations. Hearing this, a deep sense of melancholy welled up in him. It was hard to imagine the suffering endured by compatriots stranded abroad. At the same time, the upper echelons of Indra Nation were condemning Sakura Nation for its lack of honor, accusing it of surrendering land to Hashia rather than confronting them head-on. When the bearded man asked whom Indra Nation should face in the next round, the Indra divine prodigy explained that Roman state and Greece had long dominated the top 2 positions, while the other allied nations were equally ambitious. Choosing a smaller country wouldn't yield much either. Therefore, their next target would be Hashia. Hearing this, the bearded man felt a jolt of shock. Hashia had completely crushed the Sakura Nation this time, and had even produced a prodigious god-blessed like Liu Changsheng. Seizing their national strength would not be easy. Yet the Indra divine prodigy merely sneered and said that no matter how powerful Hashia's deities were, their divinity had been extinguished in battles 10,000 years ago, limiting Hashia's deities to, at best, general tier power, while God King tier beings were virtually unrivaled within Hashia. At this, the bearded man laughed out loud and mocked himself. I was overthinking it. After all, our God King tier deities are countless. Winning this divine war will be effortless. Even the divine prodigy revealed a vicious glint in his eyes, declaring that before long, Hashia's feeble deities would be enslaved. Seeing this, the bearded man felt a lingering chill. Was this really the same ascetic, desireless divine prodigy he once knew? At that moment, the arena host checked the system panel with clear interest and announced to everyone that Indra Nation's chosen opponent was Hashia. The declaration instantly filled Huaxia's audience with dread. After all, Indra Nation was one of the three great ancient civilizations, far beyond what Huaxia could currently contend with. Lu Changsheng, however, remained utterly unfazed. To him, they were clearly treating Huaxia as an easy target. Not long afterward, inside Huaxia's War Preparation Center, recalling the sight of Sakura Nation's civilians reduced to slavery, Lu Changsheng immediately asked Lu Qing which three cities Huaxia had been forced to cede. From Lu Qing, he learned that the cities were Jing'eo, Hongdao, and Yizhou, ceded 50 years ago, with Yizhou possessing the greatest land area and population resources of the three. Even if Huaxia poured all its remaining strength into the effort, reclaiming those lost territories would still be nearly impossible. After learning this, Lu Changsheng made a firm decision in his heart. Since the previous generations had failed, the responsibility of reclaiming Huaxia's lost lands would begin with him, starting today. He then requested detailed information on all of Huaxia's deities who specialized in commanding armies. Lu Qing was visibly surprised and asked, "Are you planning to use commanding deities to reclaim the lost territories?" After receiving Lu Changsheng's confirmation, a large collection of deity profiles was laid out before him. What truly caught Lu Changsheng off guard was the fact that the once legendary Xiang King was listed as only a B-rank deity. When Lu Qing realized which three deities Lu Changsheng had chosen, he fell into brief contemplation and muttered, "Choosing by Qi and Nezha makes sense. They stood out in the War of the Gods. But this Xiang Yu, isn't he a bit too weak?" Moments later, however, the dean was completely shaken, because in just a short span of time, Lu Changsheng had elevated Xiang Yu's God Bless from C rank all the way to SS rank, with compatibility surging to 90%. Seeing the exhaustion written all over Lu Changsheng's face, the dean knew full well that continuing to bestow divinity would exact an unbearable price, and hurriedly urged him, "Don't push yourself any further. You've already given more than enough for Huaxia." Lu Changsheng, however, calmly closed his eyes, sensing the deathly aura rushing toward him, silently reciting the 9-cycle mystic art as a vast surge of energy spread through the surroundings. In an instant, the dense death aura was completely dispersed. Confirming the effect of the 9-cycle mystic art filled Lu Changsheng with joy. It meant that the divine soul damage caused by bestowing divinity could be fully neutralized, suggesting that the missing divinity of Huaxia's deities might be restored after all. Smiling, he said, "Rest assured, Dean, my bound deity is the creation god Pangu. Any damage to the divine soul will be negated." The dean froze on the spot, utterly stunned. What kind of cheat did this kid even activate? Afterward, Lu Changsheng turned his gaze to Xiang Yu's phantom. Though Xiang Yu had once been a towering hero in Huaxia's history, no one had truly witnessed his glory. Perhaps from this day on, his name would once again be seen and remembered by the world. At that moment, a young woman rushed over and shouted excitedly, "Lord Lu, you're my idol." Her contracted deity, Nezha, carefully looked Lu Changsheng up and down, then asked with clear curiosity, "Why do you carry the aura of our patriarch?" Lu Changsheng immediately understood. The aura came from Pangu's transformation into the three pure ones. Tai Zhenren was a disciple of Yuanshi Tianzuan, the foremost of the three pure ones, and Nezha himself was Tai Zhenren's disciple. Strictly speaking, Nezha could be considered Pangu's direct descendant. As Lu Changsheng pondered this, Pangu's towering form flashed briefly into view. Seeing this, Nezha burst into tears, as if reunited with a long-lost family member after 10,000 years. Witnessing Nezha's emotional reaction toward his patriarch, Lu Changsheng waved his hand and began bestowing divinity upon him. When the personalized invocation was completed, Nezha suddenly felt a strange surge of power wash over him. In the next instant, he stood atop the wind-fire wheels, gripping the fire-tipped spear, with the universe ring and red armillary sash hanging at his shoulders. Even the girl cried out in disbelief, "Oh my god, my compatibility with Nezha just jumped from 30% to 80%. At that moment, Pangu's form manifested once more and said to Nezha, "Very well. Since you are my disciple, I'll grant you a little more." As his words fell, Nezha instantly transformed, growing 3 heads and 6 arms. With divinity bestowed by both Lu Changsheng and Pangu, the girl named Lin Xian not only became an S-rank god blessed, but also reached a final compatibility of 86% with Nezha. When it came time for Lu Yanran, who was contracted with Bai Qi, she had already become a full-fledged fangirl of Lu Changsheng. Gazing at Bai Qi's phantom, Lu Changsheng reflected to himself. Bai Qi had already been granted complete divinity. While his individual combat power might fall short of Nezha and Xiangyu, what truly made him terrifying was his unparalleled strategic vision and commandability. Soon after, everyone was gathered together, and Lu Changsheng publicly announced that they were about to undertake an extremely difficult mission to reclaim the 3 cities Hashia had lost. When the crowd heard his proposal to have Lu Qing deploy 30,000 troops with Nezha, Xiangyu, and Bai Qi each overseeing their own forces and fighting simultaneously, the city lord voiced his doubts. Even if all nations have shifted their focus to the arena battles, the garrisons of those 3 cities aren't something that a mere few tens of thousands of troops can break through so easily. Lu Qing responded with a smile. If Changsheng weren't personally leading this operation, the losses Hashia would suffer would be impossible to calculate. That's why we should place greater trust in young people who possess both strength and ideals. With Lu Qing backing him, Lu Changsheng made another proposal. This operation should also be broadcast live by the official media. It could be used to rally and elevate the morale of the entire nation. Hearing this, the dean couldn't help but feel concerned, because if they failed, Hashia would become the laughingstock of the world, and the blow to public confidence would be even more severe. Lu Changsheng, however, simply smiled with confidence. "Rest assured, Dean, in this battle, Hashia will prevail.